Miami Mirage. The Florida Keys sun felt different this time around. Less like a warm embrace, more like an interrogation lamp. Every passing boat on the water, every unfamiliar face lingering too long on the dock near the Sea Witch, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, a hangover from Costa Rican jungles and Panama City rooftops. I'd been back a month, maybe 6 weeks, trying to melt back into the landscape, patching up the old boat, patching up myself. Trying, and mostly failing, to ignore the data card locked away below deck, the one detailing Operation Serpiente Emplumada, and hinting, via Sully's digging, at a connection between Panama's Silas Vance and Florida's own philanthropic phantom, Harrison Croft. Wider shadows, indeed. I spent my days scraping barnacles, and my nights tracing encrypted connections, trying to map the Ouroboros conspiracy Sully had glimpsed, hitting digital brick walls guarded by resources far beyond my own. The Okeechobee dead-drop lead felt cold, too risky while Vance or Lars's employers might still be actively hunting me. Lying low felt like the smart play, the survival play. It also felt like waiting for the axe to fall. Peace, as usual, was proving to be a damn restless affair. The encrypted ping on the secure satellite phone Sully insisted I keep active came late one Tuesday afternoon. Not Sully's usual check-in signal. This was different. A summons. Got a potential client wants a meet, Jack. Sully's voice crackled, digitally disguised but familiar. Says it's sensitive. Discreet. High priority. I'm retired, Sully, I lied automatically. Remember? Hanging out warrants, enjoying the quiet life. Quiet life looks like hell on you, he retorted. This one feels different. Not government, not corporate spook stuff. Local. Miami-based. Name is Isabel Moreau. Serious money, serious connections. Old Miami family, married into new tech fortunes, sits on boards, runs charities. The kind of influence that makes mayors answer their calls. And she wants me. A fugitive wanted for murder, last seen tangling with international arms dealers and destabilizing Central America. The pieces didn't fit. How does she even know I exist, let alone how to reach you? Says she got my contact info via a mutual acquaintance from Europe. Very discreetly. Didn't name names. Sully paused. Look, Jack, I vetted her as much as I could through back channels. She's clean as that kind of money ever is. No obvious ties to Vance, Croft, Zukov, or anyone on our current watch list. She seems genuinely desperate about something local. What? Wouldn't say over the comms. Wants to meet face to face. Her place. Penthouse suite, Moreau Tower, Raquel Avenue. Tomorrow, noon. Says she needs someone effective who operates outside normal channels. Someone ghosts don't frighten. Moreau Tower. One of the glittering new skyscrapers dominating the Miami skyline, a monument to sharp angles and sharper finance. Isabel Moreau. Sounded like trouble wrapped in silk. It smells like a trap, Sully. Everything smells like a trap to you these days, he sighed. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just a rich lady with a problem she can't take to the cops. She mentioned the possibility of significant compensation. And maybe helping with your legal inconveniences if things work out. That last part was the hook. A chance to clear the warrants, get out from under the shadow of Pim and Finn's murders. Tempting. Dangerously tempting. Influence like Moreau's could potentially make inconvenient police files disappear. Or it could be the bait on a very large, very sharp hook. All right, Sully. Set it up. But tell Madame Moreau my presence isn't a guarantee I take the job. Figured as much. Stay sharp, Jack. The line went dead. The lobby of Moreau Tower was designed to intimidate. Towering ceilings, acres of polished marble, abstract sculptures that probably cost more than my boat, and security guards with tailored suits and cold eyes who looked like they could snap necks as easily as they checked IDs. Getting upstairs required navigating multiple checkpoints. My Sully-provided alias, Robert Cole, private consultant, cross-referenced against Moreau's pre-approved visitor list. The private elevator whisked me silently up to the penthouse. The doors opened onto a space that wasn't just luxurious, it was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Biscayne Bay, the city sprawling below like a glittering circuit board. Expensive art hung on the walls, minimalist furniture sat arranged with geometric precision. It felt less like a home, more like a high-tech command center designed by a fashion magazine. Isabelle Moreau stood by the window, looking out at the bay. Tall, elegant, probably late 40s but looking younger, dressed in crisp white linen slacks and a silk blouse the color of champagne. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing sharp cheekbones and intelligent, watchful eyes. She turned as I entered, her expression composed, revealing nothing. She didn't offer her hand. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice cool, modulated. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please." She gestured towards a pair of low white sofas. "Ms. Moreau," I replied, taking a seat, choosing the one that gave me the best view of the room and the entrance. "Your message indicated urgency." "It is urgent," she confirmed, sitting opposite me, her posture perfect. "And requires absolute discretion. What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. My contact assures me you are capable of such discretion, and capable of achieving results others cannot." "My results usually come with complications," I warned. "And my discretion comes with a price." "I am prepared to pay it," she said evenly. "Generously." She leaned forward slightly, her cool composure cracking just enough to reveal a hint of strain around her eyes. "Mr. Cole, people are disappearing in my city. Young people. Tourists, students, kids working service jobs, kids frequenting the nightlife scene, South Beach, Wynwood, the exclusive clubs downtown. People disappear all the time," I said. "Runaways, overdoses, deaths." "Not like this," she countered sharply. "This is different. There's a pattern. They vanish without a trace. Last seen leaving a club, at an after-party, getting into an unmarked car. No ransom demands, no bodies turning up later in some canal. Just gone. The police," she made a dismissive gesture, "are calling them isolated incidents, runaways mostly. But I know of at least 7 confirmed cases in the past 6 months. 7 families left devastated with no answers. I believe the real number is much higher. Why come to me? Why not pressure the police, use your influence?" A shadow crossed her face. "I have tried. Commissioner owes me favors, the mayor plays golf with my husband. They make concerned noises, promise task forces, but nothing happens. It's as if they are being told to look the other way. Or perhaps the problem originates from circles, even they are hesitant to investigate." She met my gaze directly. "Someone powerful is behind this, Mr. Cole. Someone is taking these young people, and I need to know who and why. And I need it stopped." "Why do you care?" I asked bluntly. Rich women in penthouse towers didn't usually get personally invested in missing service workers or tourists. Her composure slipped another notch. My niece's best friend. A bright young woman working her way through college, vanished 3 weeks ago after leaving a club in Wynwood. Her family has no influence, no resources. The police offered platitudes. I will not stand by and let this continue. Her voice held a steel edge now. Convincing. Or maybe just well-rehearsed. What do you want me to do? Find out what's happening. Infiltrate the nightlife scene, the clubs, the after-parties where these disappearances seem to originate. Find the connection. Identify the people responsible. She named a figure, a retainer fee that made the Costa Rica job look like pocket change. And she added, watching me closely, if you succeed, if you expose this network and bring the responsible parties to light. I have friends in the state attorney's office, friends in Tallahassee. Those unfortunate legal matters you seem to have acquired, perhaps they can be revisited. Favorably. The offer, the threat, the hook. Money and a clean slate. All I had to do was dive headfirst into the neon-drenched, drug-fueled, potentially lethal Miami nightlife scene and figure out who was making people disappear. It felt like walking back into the fire, trading jungle shadows for urban ones. But the image of those missing kids, the calculated coldness of whoever was taking them, It snagged on something inside me I thought was long dead. "All right, Ms. Moreau," I said, meeting her cool gaze. "You've hired yourself an investigator. But understand this, I work my way. And if this connects to bigger shadows than even you anticipate, the price might go up." She nodded slowly. "I understand perfectly, Mr. Cole. Just bring me answers. Find out who is casting this darkness over my city." I left Moreau Tower, stepping out of the refrigerated air back into the suffocating Miami heat. Invitation to darkness accepted. Now I just had to figure out how deep it went, and whether I could find my way back out again. Chapter 2. Isabel Moreau's influence, it turned out, was less a gentle suggestion and more a swift, decisive current. Within 48 hours of our meeting in her glass tower, Robert Cole, my resurrected consultant alias, now upgraded with Moreau's backing, was officially exploring opportunities in Miami's lucrative, cutthroat nightlife industry. Moreau's connections unlocked doors that would normally take months, if not years, to pry open. Architects materialized with sleek, impossibly ambitious designs. Real estate agents showcased recently failed venues in prime South Beach and Wynwood locations, available for lease at rates that screamed money laundering opportunity. A corporate entity, registered in Delaware with opaque ownership, traceable only back to one of Moreau's holding companies, sprang into existence, providing Cole with a legitimate financial backbone. My role wasn't precisely owner, not yet. That required too much day-to-day visibility, too much actual tedious business management. Instead, I was the money man, the demanding out-of-town investor, the one scouting the competition, assessing the market, looking to either build something new or take over an existing club and inject serious capital. It gave me the perfect excuse to be everywhere, asking pointed questions, observing operations from the inside out, all under the guise of due diligence. Miami nightlife wasn't just a scene. It was a pulsing, sweating, chemically fueled ecosystem operating under its own Darwinian laws. I spent nights drifting through the temples of manufactured ecstasy, from the sprawling multi-level clubs on Washington Avenue pumping out relentless EDM, to the more intimate, impossibly cool warehouses in Wynwood where art installations pulsed in time with obscure techno, to the exclusive rooftop lounges downtown where deals were cut over $1,000 bottles of champagne. As Robert Cole investor, I dressed the part. Expensive shirts, casual but sharp linen jackets that hid my pistol, a watch that cost more than 6 months' slip fees for the Sea Witch. I tipped extravagantly, bought rounds I didn't drink, listened more than I talked. I watched the beautiful people preen and pose, the desperate ones trying to connect, the predators circling. I watched the security, the beefy guys in tight black t-shirts handling crowd control, and the quieter, more dangerous ones lurking in the shadows near the VIP rooms or the back offices, the ones whose eyes held no amusement. I learned the rhythms. The ebb and flow of the crowds, the timing of the drug deals happening with casual frequency in restroom stalls or dimly lit corners, the hierarchy of promoters and DJs, the whispered names of the suppliers who kept the party going. I talked to bartenders polishing glasses with feigned indifference, to security guards bored with scanning IDs, to dancers resting their aching feet between sets, to valet kids who saw everything from the curb. Thinking of opening up nearby, I'd say casually, leaning on a bar. Seems like a tough market. What are the biggest headaches? Security. Staffing. Keeping the troublemakers out. Sometimes I got a shrug. Sometimes a weary sigh. Sometimes a flicker of fear in their eyes before they changed the subject. The disappearances Moreau mentioned weren't common knowledge, not openly discussed, but there was an undercurrent, a sense that things weren't always as shiny and carefree as the strobe lights suggested. A mention of a bouncer who vanished after roughing up the wrong patron. A cocktail waitress who just stopped showing up for her shifts, her roommate saying she'd gone to an after-party and never came back. Threads. Loose ends. Nothing concrete yet. I focused on 3 clubs where at least 2 of the confirmed disappearances originated. Ember in South Beach, known for its hedonistic pool parties, Syntax in Wynwood, trendy, artsy, fueled by designer drugs, and Apex, a rooftop place downtown, catering to the crypto bros and international finance types. I became a regular, if temporary, face. Recognized by the doorman, nodded at by the managers. Robert Cole, the potential new player, the man with the deep pockets looking to make a splash. It was at Apex, on a sweltering Thursday night, that the ecosystem decided to check me out. Apex was all glass chrome, infinity pools reflecting the glittering skyline, and music that was more about signaling status than dancing. I was at the bar, nursing a ridiculously overpriced scotch, watching the crowd, when a man slid onto the stool next to me. He wasn't dressed like the usual Apex crowd. No flashy labels, no ostentatious jewelry. Just a dark, well-cut suit, expensive but understated. Mid-40s maybe, hard to tell. Fit, tanned, with dark hair slicked back and eyes that were flat, cold, assessing. He moved with a stillness, a coiled energy that didn't belong among the boisterous finance guys and Instagram models. He ordered a mineral water. "Robert Cole," he said, his voice a low baritone with just a hint of a Colombian accent. It wasn't a question. I turned slowly. "Have we met?" "We have not," he replied, taking a small sip of his water. "But your name has come up. A man asking many questions about the nightlife business. Making plans, perhaps. Spending money." He paused. "Some find such diligence noteworthy." "Doing my homework before I invest," I said, keeping my tone level, meeting his flat gaze. "Competitive market." "Indeed," he agreed. "Competition requires understanding. Knowing who provides essential services. Who ensures smooth operations." The emphasis was subtle, but clear. He wasn't talking about liquor distributors or linen services. "I'm still evaluating," I said noncommittally. "Getting the lay of the land." "The land," he said, his eyes holding mine, "has established territories. Established partnerships. A new venture requires accommodation. Respect for the existing arrangements." He smiled then, a brief humorless stretching of the lips. "My name is Ricky Alvarez. People sometimes call me Rico. I help ensure those smooth operations for certain interested parties. Perhaps we could have a chat sometime soon, Mr. Cole. Discuss how your potential venture might integrate." Rico Alvarez. The name meant nothing concrete, but the implication was crystal clear. Cartel. Mid-level manager. Enforcer. Whatever his title, he was delivering a message. They knew who I was, what I was ostensibly doing. And they wanted to know more. They wanted to know if I was a threat, a competitor, or a potential customer for their essential services. "Perhaps," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm still exploring options." "Do let me know when your exploration becomes more concrete," Rico said smoothly. He finished his water, nodded once, and slid off the stool, disappearing back into the well-dressed crowd as silently as he had arrived. I watched him go, the ice in my scotch suddenly feeling colder. So much for blending in. My cover, designed to let me observe, had instead painted a target on my back. The cartel knew Robert Cole was sniffing around. They were watching. The invitation to darkness Isabel Moreau had offered was turning out to be an invitation to a very dangerous dance, and my first partner had just introduced himself. The game was on. Chapter 3. Meeting Rico Alvarez had the same bracing effect as a bucket of ice water dumped over your head while you were sleeping. It woke you up fast. My cover as Robert Cole, the moneyed investor, wasn't just a convenient fiction anymore. It was bait dangling in dangerous waters. The casual questions, the networking, the overt scouting of club operations, all that had to be dialed back. Rico, or the cartel he represented, was watching. Pushing too hard, asking the wrong questions now, would be like poking a sleeping alligator with a sharp stick. Unwise. I shifted tactics. Less visible presence in the front-of-house velvet rope sections, more time spent observing the mundane machinery that kept the party going. The loading docks receiving deliveries at odd hours, the labyrinthine service corridors, the perpetually overflowing dumpsters out back, the bleary-eyed staff clocking out at dawn. Moreau's money opened doors here too, greasing palms for access to blueprints, delivery schedules, staff rosters for the venues I was supposedly considering acquiring or competing with. all under the guise of assessing operational efficiency, of course. The disappearances, they clustered around specific nights, specific clubs, but lacked an obvious public link. No big scene, no struggle witnessed. People just evaporated. If Moreau was right, if the police were being deliberately slow, then the victims weren't being grabbed off the street. They were being taken from within the clubs, or lured away discreetly. That meant access, complicity, or expertly exploited blind spots. My focus narrowed on Club Ember, the South Beach spot known for its decadent pool parties that raged well past sunrise. 2 of the confirmed missing had last been seen there. I spent hours nursing drinks at the periphery, watching. Not the dancers or the DJs, but the staff. The security. The handlers who managed the high-roller cabanas. I noticed certain patterns. Specific valets who weren't just parking cars, but seemed to linger near the exits, communicating discreetly via earpieces. Certain VIP hosts who seemed particularly adept at isolating younger, often intoxicated patrons, tourists looking lost, kids wide-eyed on their first trip to South Beach, steering them towards private sections or suggesting exclusive after-parties elsewhere. It was slow, painstaking work, sorting signal from noise in an environment designed for sensory overload. Then I got a whisper. Moreau's money, distributed carefully through intermediaries Sully helped set up, bought me a few minutes with a kid named Leo who worked sanitation crew at Ember, cleaning up the aftermath long after the beautiful people had gone home. Leo had seen things he didn't understand but knew weren't right. We met near the sea wall on South Point Park Pier, away from the club's orbit, the lights of Fisher Island twinkling across the dark water. Leo was jumpy, constantly glancing over his shoulder, needing the cash I offered bad enough to overcome his fear. "It's the white vans, man," he said, his voice low, rapid-fire Spanish interspersed with nervous English. "No logos. They come late, like 4, 5 in the morning, always to the service entrance near loading dock 3. Supposed to be late-night linen service, maybe catering pickup. But sometimes people go out." "People?" I prompted gently. "Kids. Like young ones. Look messed up, you know. Drugged maybe. Can barely walk. 2 guys, always the same 2 big guys, not regular staff, help them into the van. They don't look like they going home happy, man." He shuddered. "Saw this girl once, couldn't have been more than 18, crying, but like, silent crying. They put her in the van. It drove away. Never saw her again." "You tell anyone?" "Security. Management." Leo snorted, a harsh, scared sound. "You crazy? Management knows. Those 2 big guys. They walk around like they own the place when they hear. Security looks the other way. One time, new security kid asked what was going on. He wasn't working the next night. Just gone. He took the cash I offered, stuffing it quickly into his pocket. That's all I know, man. That's all I want to know. Stay away from those white vans. Human trafficking. Taking vulnerable kids right out the back door of exclusive clubs while security looked the other way. Drugged, abducted, loaded into unmarked vans. It fit the pattern, explained the lack of public witnesses, the police inertia. It was colder, uglier than I'd imagined. This wasn't just disappearances. It was a modern-day slave trade operating under the glitter of Miami Beach. Rico Alvarez and his interested parties weren't just providing party favors, they were likely running this meat market. The information galvanized me. I needed proof, needed license plates for those vans, needed identities for the handlers and the 2 big guys. I started spending more time near the warehouse space Moreau's people had leased for Robert Cole's planned club venture in a rapidly gentrifying industrial district between Wynwood and the airport. It was plausibly located for late-night deliveries, offered good sightlines to certain routes leading away from the beach clubs, and gave me a secure place to set up surveillance equipment without attracting attention at my marina slip. The warehouse itself was cavernous, empty save for some construction materials Moreau's team had strategically placed for appearance's sake, and my own discreetly installed comms gear and monitors. I was there late one night, reviewing traffic camera footage Sully had managed to access, trying to identify the make and model of the unmarked white vans Leo described, when the world exploded in flashing lights and shouting voices. Policia! Manos arriba! Police! Hands up! Headlights pinned the warehouse entrance, bathing the interior in blinding glare. Doors slammed, heavy boots pounded on the concrete outside. Through the grime-streaked windows, I saw at least 3 Miami-Dade police cruisers, lights flashing, officers deploying, weapons drawn, taking cover behind their vehicles. A raid. Not cartel. Not some rival faction. This was official. And they were here for me, or at least for Robert Cole. How? Did Leo talk? Did Rico tip them off, wanting to see what shook loose? Or was Moreau playing a deeper game, using me and then setting me up for the fall? No time to figure it out. They were shouting commands through a bullhorn now, demanding the occupants come out with hands visible. My cover as Cole, the nightclub investor, was instantly shredded. Getting arrested meant fingerprints, background checks, the Florida warrants popping up like angry boils, maybe even exposure connecting me back to Panama and Costa Rica if Vance's people had shared intel. I couldn't let them take me. I grabbed my gear bag, burner laptop, tablet, the Panama data card, basic tools, and sprinted towards the back of the warehouse. Moreau's architects had noted an old bricked-up loading bay door on the original blueprints, facing a disused railway spur overgrown with weeds. Maybe, just maybe. Using the butt of my pistol, I hammered at the crumbling mortar around the bricks near the bottom. Behind me, I heard the front roller door groaning upwards as the police prepared to make entry. Mortar gave way, bricks loosened. I kicked frantically, creating a small opening, then hammered again, widening it just enough. Flashlight beams stabbed into the warehouse darkness from the front. Police! Show yourself. I squeezed through the jagged opening, tearing my shirt, scraping my skin on rough brick, tumbling out into the overgrown darkness behind the warehouse just as the first officers entered the front. I landed hard, rolled, and ran, melting into the shadows of the derelict industrial landscape. Behind me, the sounds of the police searching the empty warehouse, their shouts echoing in the cavernous space. I paused blocks away, hidden in the doorway of a defunct auto body shop, watching the flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the low clouds. The raid was focused on my warehouse, my cover. Compromised. Blown. I had a glimpse of the truth now, the brutal reality of the human trafficking ring operating under the nose of Miami's elite. But I was back in the shadows, my carefully constructed identity ruined, the police now actively aware of Robert Cole, and the cartel undoubtedly watching the outcome with keen interest. The mirage had shimmered and dissolved, leaving me exposed and running again. Chapter 4. The air in the room was thick enough to swim through, a greasy cocktail of stale cigarette smoke, disinfectant that failed to mask underlying decay, and the omnipresent damp heat rising off the nearby Port of Miami docks. It was a third-floor room in a transient hotel called the Mariner's Rest, a place whose primary selling point seemed to be its profound lack of curiosity about its clientele. After scrambling away from the police raid at the warehouse, ditching the immediate area, and spending a sleepless night huddled in the rusting hull of an abandoned shrimper, this dilapidated room felt like the Biltmore. It was anonymous, paid for in cash scraped from the bottom of my go bag, and hopefully off the radar of both the Miami-Dade PD and whoever tipped them off. I sat on the edge of the questionable mattress, cleaning my pistol, my mind racing through the implications of the raid. Was it Rico Alvarez, testing the mysterious Robert Cole? Unlikely. Too public. Too much risk of Cole actually getting arrested and talking. Was it Isabel Moreau, my influential client, deciding my usefulness had ended or trying to control the narrative? Possible, but felt premature. Or was it just bad luck? Crossed wires, maybe triggered by my own clumsy electronic probing or Sully's remote assistance. Impossible to know. What was certain was that the Robert Cole identity was ashes. My operational base was compromised, and my knowledge about the trafficking ring made me a liability to someone very powerful. A knock on the door. Soft, almost polite. Not the heavy-handed thump of cops, or the furtive scratch of a junkie looking for a handout. Instinct took over. I moved silently off the bed, weapon ready, flattening myself against the wall beside the door, same position I seemed destined to occupy lately. "Room service," a voice called, low and carrying that faint Colombian accent I now recognized with a jolt of cold dread. Rico Alvarez. He hadn't found me through police channels. This was too fast, too quiet. He must have had surveillance on the warehouse, watched me escape, tracked me through the industrial sprawl and the pre-dawn shadows. My attempt at disappearing had failed utterly. I didn't answer. Didn't move. Let him wonder if the room was empty. Another soft knock. "Mr. Cole." The name dripped with amusement now. Or perhaps that name no longer applies. Such a shame about your ambitious nightclub venture. Permits can be so troublesome. A pause. "We know you're in there. Let's avoid making this unpleasant for the other guests." He wasn't alone. I could sense it, the subtle shift of weight in the hallway, the change in the air. Opening the door meant facing him. Not opening it meant facing whatever backup he had brought, likely coming through the flimsy window or the door itself. Neither option had much appeal. "Doors open," I called out, keeping my voice level, trying to project calm I didn't feel, my pistol still held ready but lowered slightly. The knob turned slowly. Rico stepped inside, impeccably dressed as before, seemingly unfazed by the room's squalor. His eyes, cold and intelligent, immediately found me against the wall. He gave that small, chilling smile. Behind him in the hallway I glimpsed another figure, big, impassive, built like a concrete piling. Rico gently closed the door, leaving the concrete piling outside. "Private chat." "You lead an interesting life, Mr. Cole," Rico began, letting his gaze drift around the room with faint distaste. "One moment, you're a potential investor rubbing elbows at Apex. The next, you're dodging police raids and holding up in places like this. It suggests complexity." "Just ran into some zoning issues," I said, shrugging. "Bureaucratic nightmare." Rico chuckled softly, a dry, humorless sound. "Bureaucracy. Yes. That must be it." He walked further into the room, stopping near the grimy window overlooking an alley filled with overflowing dumpsters. "Or perhaps it had more to do with your diligent homework. Your questions about security protocols at certain establishments. Your interest in late-night deliveries and staff movements. Your inquiries about unfortunate disappearances." He knew. He wasn't guessing. He knew exactly what I'd been looking for. The raid hadn't just blown my cover, it had confirmed my purpose in his eyes. "You possess a certain skill set," Rico continued, turning back to face me. "Resourcefulness. Situational awareness. The ability to evade official attention. These are valuable qualities." "Glad you appreciate them," I said warily. "Planning on offering me a job?" The question was meant as sarcasm, a deflection. His smile widened slightly. "As a matter of fact, yes. My associates and I, we were discussing you after our little chat at Apex. Your appearance was unexpected. Your questions intriguing. The police raid clarified things." He gestured vaguely. "The operation you were investigating, let's call it talent recruitment, is a sensitive, highly profitable division of our larger enterprise. Your interference is problematic." He paused, letting the implicit threat hang in the stale air. "Normally, such problems are resolved simply. Permanently. A regrettable necessity of doing business." His eyes held mine, cold and direct. "However, your demonstrated abilities suggest an alternative. Wasteful killing offends my sense of efficiency." Here it came. The pitch. The hook. The ultimatum disguised as opportunity. "My associates believe your talents could be redirected," Rico went on smoothly. "We have need of individuals who understand security, logistics, discretion. Individuals who can anticipate problems, manage sensitive situations, ensure smooth operations both within the nightlife venues and during transport phases." He let that hang there, the euphemism for the trafficking stark and ugly. "Your experience, your apparent understanding of how these things work beneath the surface, could be invaluable." "You want me to work for you?" I asked, disbelief warring with the cold knot of dread in my stomach. Help you run your talent recruitment. Help us ensure its security, its efficiency, Rico corrected gently. Provide consultation. Identify risks, like inconvenient investigators, for example. Perhaps handle personnel issues. Demonstrate your loyalty, your value to the organization. He spread his hands slightly. Become an asset, Mr. Cole. Prove that you are more valuable to us, alive and cooperative. And the alternative? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Rico's smile vanished. His eyes were flat ice. The alternative is that this conversation ends now. You become another statistic, another missing person. Perhaps found in a canal weeks from now, mourned by no one, investigated by no one. We are very good at making problems disappear, as you yourself have been discovering. The trap was sprung. Beautifully, ruthlessly. Refuse, and the concrete piling outside the door comes in, and I end up as gator bait. Accept, and I become complicit in the very horror I was hired to stop, working for the cartel, betraying Moreau, betraying whatever scrap of integrity I had left. But acceptance meant survival, at least for now. It meant a chance, however slim, to gather intel from the inside, to find a way to burn the whole rotten structure down. A double life. The most dangerous game there was. I thought of the kids Leo described, being forced into those vans. I thought of Isabel Moreau's face, the steel beneath the silk. I thought of the warrants waiting for me, if the cops ever got lucky. There was no good choice here, only bad and worse. Working for you. I let the words hang, playing for time, trying to project reluctance, calculation. What guarantees do I have? How do I know this isn't just a way to use me, and then dispose of me? Rico chuckled again. Trust, Mr. Cole, is a luxury neither of us can afford. Let's call it mutual benefit, based on mutual survival. You make yourself valuable, you stay valuable. You cause problems. He shrugged. As for guarantees, your continued respiration is the only one offered. He pulled a small, encrypted burner phone from his pocket, identical to the ones used by high-level dealers and operatives. Your first consultation. There is a potential security leak at Club Ember. Staff level. Find it. Report your findings to the number programmed in this phone. Only this number. You will be contacted with further instructions. And Mr. Cole, he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, do not imagine for 1 second that you are not being watched. Every minute. Every step. He placed the phone on the grimy bedside table, gave me one last assessing look, then turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. I heard his footsteps, and those of his heavy companion, recede down the hallway. I stood there for a long time, the cheap motel room feeling like the walls were closing in. I held Rico's phone in my hand. A lifeline? Or a leash? I was still alive. But I was compromised, co-opted, forced into the service of the very monsters I was supposed to hunt. The double life had begun, and the odds of surviving it felt vanishingly small. Chapter 5. Playing the part of Rico Alvarez's newest reluctant asset felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. Every step required careful calculation. Every word a potential misstep that could end with a swift, final severance package delivered via silenced pistol. My first assignment, identifying the supposed security leak at Club Ember, was a tightrope walk over a pit of hungry gators. I needed to find something plausible to report back, something that proved Robert Cole's utility, without actually disrupting the trafficking operation I was now nominally protecting, and without getting myself killed by whoever the real leak might be, if one even existed beyond Rico's paranoia or testing. I spent 2 nights back at Ember, this time with the subtle but palpable awareness that I wasn't just observing, I was being observed. Rico's eyes were everywhere. The bored-looking busboy, the overly friendly cocktail waitress, the impassive giant guarding the velvet rope, any one of them could be reporting back. I nursed expensive drinks, watched the ebb and flow, focused on the lower-level churn. Petty theft, skimming cash registers, bartenders overpouring for friends, minor drug deals happening just outside the periphery of the house security's notice. The usual background radiation of any high-volume cash business operating in the moral gray zone. I picked my target. A young bartender named Danny, flashy watch, always seemed to have cash for substances he couldn't possibly afford on his salary, frequently seen chatting up runners for a rival crew, known for pushing cheaper, lower-quality product in the alleys outside the club. Easy enough to frame as passing customer information or warning off house dealers. I compiled a brief, professional-sounding report on potential vulnerabilities related to staff integrity, naming Danny and outlining his suspicious connections, and sent it via the encrypted burner Rico had provided. Proof of concept. Plausible deniability for me. If Danny ended up floating in a canal tomorrow. It felt dirty, like throwing chum to distract the sharks, but survival mode had kicked in hard. The encrypted reply came hours later. A single word, acceptable. Followed by coordinates and a time. Warehouse 7, Port Miami Logistics Annex. Tonight. 2300. No explanation. Just a summons. Port Miami Logistics Annex wasn't technically part of the main port. It was a sprawling, desolate zone of aging warehouses, truck depots, and container storage yards further inland, bordering the fetid edge of the mangroves west of the airport. A place where cargo could arrive, disappear, and depart again with minimal oversight, buffered by layers of indifference and jurisdiction hopping. Warehouse 7 was at the far end of a poorly lit service road, surrounded by a crumbling chain-link fence topped with rusted barbed wire. The building itself was a massive, windowless concrete box, silent and dark, except for a single bare bulb burning weakly over a side loading bay door. Rico's sleek black sedan was parked nearby, engine idling silently. As I pulled up in another disposable vehicle I'd acquired, Rico himself stepped out from the shadows beneath the loading bay overhang. No backup visible this time, but I didn't doubt they were nearby, tucked away in the darkness. "Mr. Cole," Rico greeted me, his voice smooth as ever, betraying no hint of the violence simmering beneath the surface. "Punctual. Efficiency is appreciated." "You asked me to come," I said, getting out, keeping my hands visible. The air here smelled of diesel, stagnant water, and industrial decay. "Indeed. Your assessment of the Ember situation was adequate," he conceded. "Identified a minor nuisance. Easily rectified." He gestured towards the warehouse. "Tonight, however, requires a different kind of assessment. This facility is occasionally used for temporary storage, consolidating certain assets before onward transport." His eyes glinted in the dim light. "We suspect potential inventory discrepancies. Perhaps related to your bartender friend's loose lips, perhaps simple internal mismanagement. Assets. Talent recruitment. Euphemisms piled on euphemisms, designed to sanitize the ugly reality." "You want me to check your inventory?" "I thought I was security consultant." "Security involves inventory control," Rico countered smoothly. "We need a fresh set of eyes, someone objective, to verify the manifests against the stored product. Standard procedure." He slid open the heavy loading bay door, revealing a cavernous, dimly lit interior. Stacks of anonymous wooden crates, some shrink-wrapped pallets, forklifts parked like sleeping metal beasts. "The manifests are in the supervisor's office back there." He pointed towards a grimy office cubicle built into the far wall. "Check Lot B, Section 4. Cross-reference container IDs against the list. Report any discrepancies directly to me. I have other business nearby. I will return in," he glanced at an expensive watch, 45 minutes. He left me there, sliding the door almost closed, plunging the warehouse into near darkness relieved only by shafts of moonlight filtering through gaps in the corrugated roof high above. Leaving me alone. Or leaving me watched by unseen eyes. Testing my initiative, my loyalty, my curiosity? Probably all three. I found the supervisor's office easily enough. Plywood walls, dusty desk, overflowing ashtray, a cheap computer monitor displaying a screensaver. The manifests were clipped to a board, lists of alphanumeric codes corresponding to crates stacked out in the gloom. Lot B, Section 4. I grabbed a flashlight from my pack and headed out into the main space. The air was still, heavy with the smell of dust and machine oil. My footsteps echoed unnervingly. I found Section 4, started checking crate IDs against the list, making a show of it in case I was being observed on some hidden camera. Crate after crate matched the manifest, mundane codes for what was probably harmless commercial goods used as cover. But my eyes were scanning, searching for inconsistencies, for anything out of place. And I found it, tucked away behind a stack of pallets wrapped in black plastic, almost completely hidden. A section of the concrete floor looked newer than the surrounding area, the dust pattern disturbed. A trapdoor. I knelt down, examined it closely. No visible handle, but a faint seam suggested a hidden panel. Using the tip of my machete, carried more for utility than fighting these days, I probed the seam, found a slight give, and managed to pry up a section of reinforced flooring. Beneath it was a shallow compartment, maybe 3 feet deep. And inside, illuminated by my flashlight beam, wasn't product. It was paperwork. Stacks of it bundled neatly. Logbooks, bills of lading, customs declarations, all looking official but clearly fabricated. And tucked within them, something far more significant, cheap spiral notebooks filled with handwritten entries. Dates, times, vehicle numbers, trucks, mostly destinations. Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, even cities in Canada and Mexico. Alongside the destinations were simple tallies and cryptic codes. 18F, 22M, blonde, dark, compliant, sedated. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just local. This warehouse wasn't just temporary storage. It was a major node, a processing and transit hub for the human trafficking network. They were packing these kids like cargo, assigning them codes, shipping them across state lines, across borders, feeding some vast, horrific demand. The sheer scale of it, documented in these pathetic, grimy notebooks, was staggering. This wasn't just a Miami problem. It was a continental nightmare. I heard the faint rumble of Rico's sedan returning outside. No time to take everything. I grabbed 2 of the notebooks, the ones with the most recent entries and the widest range of destinations, stuffing them deep inside my jacket. I quickly scanned a few bills of lading, memorizing trucking company names and routing numbers. Then I replaced the floor panel, kicking dust over the seams, hoping it looked undisturbed. I walked back towards the supervisor's office, just as Rico slid the loading door open again, bathing the entrance in faint light. "Any discrepancies, Mr. Cole?" he asked, his eyes sharp, searching my face. "None," I lied smoothly, holding up the manifest clipboard. "Lot B, Section 4 matches perfectly. Whoever is skimming isn't doing it from this inventory." Rico nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Excellent. Efficiency. I appreciate that." He didn't ask to see my verification notes. Didn't seem particularly interested in the manifests at all. The inventory check had been a charade, a test. Had I passed? Or had he seen something in my eyes, some flicker that betrayed the sickening discovery I'd just made? "Your work tonight is concluded," Rico said. "You will be contacted when your services are required again. Do not attempt to contact us." He gestured towards the door. Dismissed. I walked out into the humid Miami night, the weight of the stolen notebooks pressing against my ribs. I had survived another encounter, passed another test, maintained my precarious cover. But the knowledge I carried now was infinitely heavier, darker. The Mirage wasn't just confined to Miami's glittering clubs. It stretched across the entire country, built on the stolen lives recorded in cheap spiral notebooks hidden beneath a dusty warehouse floor. And I was trapped right in the middle of it, pretending to be part of the machinery. Chapter 6. Living under Rico Alvarez's thumb was like having a permanent migraine simmering behind the eyes. Every action felt scrutinized, every word weighed. He assigned me tasks through the encrypted burner phone, usually demanding, always vague, testing my obedience, my resourcefulness, my willingness to get my hands dirty in his sandbox. I spent a few days, ostensibly consulting on security vulnerabilities for a grimy check-cashing chain in Little Havana that clearly served as a cartel money laundering front. My report highlighted easily fixable flaws, outdated cameras, predictable guard routines, while carefully omitting the truly critical weaknesses I spotted. Plausible work. Useful to Rico, but not too useful. Another task involved mediating a dispute between two low-level crews running street-level drugs near the Port Miami terminals, territory Rico's associates controlled. Mediating meant showing up, looking imposing in my Robert Cole investor suit, listening to snarling threats between twitchy young men barely old enough to shave, and delivering Rico's chillingly polite message about respecting established boundaries or facing permanent market correction. I wasn't pulling triggers, wasn't handling product, but I was facilitating. Oiling the gears of the machine. The dirt felt like it was seeping under my skin, a stain I couldn't wash off in the cheap motel shower. All the while, Rico's people watched. Sometimes it was obvious, the same gray sedan parked down the block, the impassive face staring too long from across a crowded diner. Sometimes it was subtle, the click on the burner phone line, the brief, inexplicable power flicker in my room. They wanted me to know I was on a leash. They wanted me nervous, compliant. They succeeded on the first count. But paranoia cuts both ways. While playing the part of Cole, the compromised asset, I was meticulously working the intel from the warehouse logbooks. Late at night, in the flickering fluorescent gloom of my room, I photographed the key pages of the two notebooks I'd stolen, the routes, the destinations, the coded tallies of victims. Transferred the images to an encrypted micro SD card no bigger than my thumbnail. The challenge was getting that card, or the critical information, to Sully without leaving an electronic trail Rico's tech people could trace back to me or my handler. Direct upload was suicide. The burner phone Rico gave me was undoubtedly monitored. My own tablet, used only for offline analysis now, couldn't risk connecting to any network. I needed something older, slower, harder to trace. I needed dead drops. Miami, for all its glitz, is riddled with forgotten corners, transient spaces perfect for leaving things unnoticed, if only for a short while. While running Rico's errands, I scouted locations. Under a loose brick, in the crumbling seawall near Matheson Hammock Park. Taped beneath a specific bench at a deserted Greyhound station waiting area late at night. Inside a hollowed-out book, in the dusty foreign language section of the main public library. I varied the locations, never using the same type twice. The communication with Sully was equally circumspect. Using payphones, dinosaurs that still lurked on street corners in the city's less gentrified neighborhoods, I made brief coded calls to numbers Sully and I had established years ago for dire emergencies. Sometimes just dialing a sequence, letting it ring twice, hanging up. A signal I was operational and needed contact. Other times, leaving a voicemail consisting of seemingly random numbers, page numbers, line numbers, word counts, referencing a specific, obscure edition of a sailing almanac we both owned. Those numbers translated into coordinates for the next dead drop location, and a specific time window for retrieval. Leaving the micro SD card taped under a park bench at 3 a.m., heart pounding, convinced every shadow held one of Rico's watchers, felt insane. Walking away, not knowing if Sully's retrieval agent, he wouldn't come himself, too risky, would get there before some random vagrant, or worse, before Rico's people swept the area, was pure agony. Confirmation came subtly, days later. Sully knew I scanned international news feeds obsessively, looking for ripples from Panama, Costa Rica, anything related to Vance or Zukov. One morning, a small, seemingly insignificant Reuters report appeared online about increased vigilance regarding cross-border trucking regulations, specifically citing routes originating in Florida, heading towards Atlanta and Houston, two key destinations logged in the warehouse notebooks. Below the article, in the comments section, a place usually filled with incoherent rage, was a single anonymous comment. Almanac reading confirms interesting currents. Charts updated. Fair winds. Sully had the intel. The interstate network details were out, at least to him. What he could do with it, operating from the shadows himself, was another question, but the information wasn't buried in my pocket anymore. My acceptable performance seemed to be earning me a slightly longer leash, or perhaps just deeper entanglement. Rico called me on his burner. Cole, there is a reception tonight. Charity function for the new children's wing at County General. Very exclusive. Hosted by Harrison Croft. Croft, the phantom financier from Florida, potentially linked to Panama's Silas Vance. My pulse quickened. Am I providing security consultation? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. No, Rico replied. You are attending as my guest. A pause, letting the implications sink in. Mr. Croft appreciates knowing who the significant players are in Miami's various enterprises. It's good for business, cultivating relationships. You will accompany me, observe, be introduced if necessary. Consider it professional development. Being paraded in front of Harrison Croft, the man I suspected funded Zhukov's Florida operations and possibly had ties to the entire Serpiente Emplumada conspiracy, while acting as an asset for a cartel enforcer. The irony was thick enough to choke on. It was also an opportunity. A chance to get eyes on Croft again, gauge his connection to Rico's faction of the cartel, maybe even overhear something. I'll need appropriate attire, I said. It will be provided, Rico assured me smoothly. A car will collect you at 7. Be ready. He hung up. The dance of deception continued. I had successfully leaked the interstate trafficking intel, a small victory in a losing war. But now Rico was pulling me closer, bringing me into the orbit of Harrison Croft himself. Was it a sign of growing tolerance? A reward for my perceived compliance? Or was it another test, designed to see how I reacted when introduced to the apex predator at the top of Miami's shadowy food chain? Either way, tonight I'd be swimming with sharks again, pretending to be one of them, hoping they didn't smell the blood in the water. Chapter 7. Harrison Croft's annual fundraiser for the new children's wing wasn't just a party, it was a command performance of Miami's power elite. Held this year at the sprawling Vizcaya Museum and Gardens, it offered a backdrop of Gilded Age opulence, European-style gardens rolling down to the moonlit waters of Biscayne Bay. Chandeliers dripped crystal light, champagne flowed like water, and fortunes and jewels glittered on tanned necks and wrists. Politicians glad-handed captains of industry, socialites exchanged air kisses, and beneath the veneer of philanthropic concern, deals were undoubtedly being struck, alliances forged, backs metaphorically stabbed. And I was there, Robert Cole, Rico Alvarez's quiet associate, looking appropriately uncomfortable in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that felt like a straitjacket. Rico moved through the crowd with practiced ease, exchanging nods here, brief handshakes there, a predator perfectly camouflaged among the oblivious peacocks. He introduced me occasionally, my associate Mr. Cole, exploring investment opportunities, to faces I recognized from the financial pages or gossip columns. I smiled politely, murmured inanities, and tried not to let my disgust show. These were the people whose city harbored a monstrous trafficking ring, people who either didn't know, didn't care, or maybe even profited from the shadows. Harrison Croft himself played the benevolent host to perfection. He circulated, shaking hands, posing for photos, radiating wealth and civic virtue. Up close, his eyes held the same cold calculation I'd seen in Silas Vance, the same utter certainty of his own untouchability. He greeted Rico with a warmth that seemed genuine, though brief. "Ricky, good to see you contributing to the community," Croft said, clapping him on the shoulder. He gave me a dismissive glance, the kind reserved for anonymous functionaries. Seeing them together, the philanthropist and the enforcer, confirmed the ugly symbiosis that kept Miami's glittering machine running. My role was to observe, blend in, be Rico's silent partner. But my eyes kept drifting towards the periphery, towards the service entrances, the catering tents set up discreetly near the formal gardens, the flow of uniformed staff. The logbooks from the warehouse, detailing victims shipped out like produce, haunted my thoughts. Was this event just another opportunity? Another piece of logistical cover for the cartel's talent recruitment? The encrypted burner phone Moreau had insisted I keep, as a secondary emergency contact channel, separate from Rico's monitored device, vibrated silently in my pocket. Excusing myself from Rico with a mumbled comment about needing air, I found a secluded corner of a moonlit colonnade overlooking the bay, shielded by thick bougainvillea. The message was from Sully, routed through Moreau's secure network, short and chilling. Warehouse logbook cross-ref indicates truck from flagged holler, ATL HOU routes, logged arrival vicinity Vizcaya service access 21:45 Eastern Standard Time. High probability cargo, matches victim profile. Exercise extreme caution. My blood ran cold. Not just suspicion anymore. Confirmation. They were using Croft's charity gala, right here, right now, as a transfer point. Bringing victims in, under cover of event logistics, likely holding them somewhere on the sprawling grounds before moving them out again later tonight, in those same unmarked white vans Leo the sanitation kid had described. The sheer audacity, the monstrous cynicism of it, took my breath away. Exercise extreme caution. Easy for Sully to say, from whatever remote bunker he operated from. I was here, inside the beast, practically chained to one of its chief handlers. What could I possibly do? Alert Moreau. Too slow, too uncertain. Call the cops. They'd likely dismiss it, or get tangled in jurisdictional tape until it was too late, assuming they weren't compromised themselves. And any overt action would immediately expose me to Rico, resulting in my swift and certain demise. But the thought of those kids trapped somewhere on these beautiful manicured grounds, waiting to be shipped off into God knows what fresh hell, it wouldn't let me stand still. I had to do something. Disrupt the transfer. Create chaos. Give someone, anyone, a chance to escape. My mind raced, formulating a desperate, half-baked plan. I needed a diversion, something to pull security away from the service areas, something to get me away from Rico's watchful eye without raising immediate suspicion. Returning to the main terrace where Rico was schmoozing with a state senator, I feigned sudden illness. Clutched my stomach, broke into a cold sweat, not entirely faked given the circumstances, mumbled apologies about needing fresh air, maybe something I ate. Rico eyed me sharply, suspicion warring with annoyance at the social inconvenience. Go, he said curtly. Do not cause a scene. Find a bathroom. It was the opening I needed. Instead of heading towards the restrooms, I ducked into a service corridor, pulling off the tuxedo jacket, trying to look less like a guest and more like someone who belonged back of house. Following the faint smell of cooking oil and disinfectant, I navigated the maze of hallways towards the service entrance Sully's message indicated, near the catering staging area. The atmosphere back here was completely different. Hushed efficiency replaced the party buzz. Staff hurried past, carrying trays or pushing carts. Security was present but different too. Fewer suits, more burly guys in catering blacks or generic security uniforms, their eyes constantly scanning, communicating via earpieces, clearly focused on specific access points. Through a gap between two large catering trucks parked near a loading dock, I saw it. An unmarked white van, identical to the ones Leo described, engine idling quietly. Two large, impassive men stood near the back, the same types Leo mentioned. The rear doors were closed, but I could almost feel the terrified silence emanating from within. Nearby, another group of uniformed security conferred quietly, clearly coordinating something specific, unrelated to party logistics. This was the transfer point. They were waiting for the moment the party peaked. Security focused elsewhere to load the victims, likely brought here earlier disguised as supplies or staff, into the van for transport off the estate. I needed to stop that van, stop the transfer, create maximum chaos now. My eyes scanned the area. Fuel drums stacked near a generator trailer. Propane tanks for the catering grills. A forklift parked nearby, keys dangling. Okay, plan B or maybe plan C, reckless, noisy but maybe effective. Moving quickly, staying in the shadows cast by the trucks, I reached the parked forklift. The engine turned over with a surprisingly quiet electric hum. Driving a forklift wasn't exactly in my skill set, but the controls looked simple enough. Forward, reverse lift. I eased it forward, aiming for the stacked fuel drums near the generator. Just as I reached them, one of the vanguards spotted me, shouted an alarm. Too late. I lowered the forklift tines, nudged the precariously stacked drums, sending them tumbling towards the generator with a crash. Then I jammed the accelerator in reverse, simultaneously swinging the lift mechanism upwards, aiming to clip the overhead power lines feeding the temporary lights illuminating the loading dock. Sparks erupted as the tines hit the wires. The lights blew out, plunging the immediate area into near darkness, broken only by the distant party lights and the headlights of the white van. Shouts, confusion. Someone started firing blindly into the darkness. The tumbling fuel drums hadn't ignited, thankfully, but the generator sputtered and died, adding to the chaos. In the confusion, under the cover of the sudden darkness and shouting, I vaulted off the forklift and sprinted towards the white van. The two guards near it were momentarily disoriented, trying to identify the threat. I slammed into the nearest one, driving my shoulder into his gut, sending him stumbling back. The second one turned, raising a weapon, but I was already yanking open the van's rear door handle. For a split second, I saw inside. Young faces, terrified, huddled together in the dark. Maybe 4 or 5 kids, teenagers mostly. One girl met my eyes, her expression numb with shock. "Run!" I yelled, hoping they understood, hoping they had the strength. "Get out. Run." Then the second guard was on me. A heavy blow caught me on the side of the head, sending me staggering. More security was converging, drawn by the blackout and the gunfire. I scrambled backwards, firing my pistol towards the guards near the van, trying to give the kids inside a chance, a distraction. Did any of them get out? Did they understand? I didn't know. Figures were moving in the darkness, tackling someone, maybe one of the victims, maybe one of the guards in the confusion. More shots were fired. Sirens wailed in the distance now, louder, closer than before. Someone at the gala must have called the real cops. I couldn't stay. I'd done what I could, disrupted the immediate transfer, caused chaos, maybe given someone a chance. But my cover here, my position within Rico's operation, was irrevocably compromised the moment those lights blew. I turned and ran, melting back into the shadows of Vizcaya's manicured gardens, leaving the chaos behind me. The terrified faces in the van burned into my memory. The storm hadn't just gathered, it had broken. And I was caught right in the middle of the lightning. Chapter 8. Adrenaline is a deceptive fuel. It burns hot and fast, gets you through the immediate firefight, the desperate scramble, but leaves you running on fumes just when you need clarity the most. I pushed through the manicured hedges bordering Vizcaya's formal gardens, heart hammering, the phantom faces of the kids in the van flashing behind my eyes, the sounds of chaos, shouts, maybe more gunfire, the approaching wail of police sirens fading slightly behind me. Getting clear of the estate was priority 1. Rico would know instantly who was responsible for the disruption at the loading dock. My Robert Cole persona wasn't just compromised, it was radioactive. The main gates would be swarming with police by now, maybe already sealed. My best bet was the bayfront. The Vizcaya property stretched down to the water, all mangroves and limestone groins and private little docks for tenders servicing the yachts anchored out in the deeper water. Find a small boat, borrow it, ditch it across the bay in Coconut Grove or Key Biscayne, melt away before anyone connected the gala saboteur to the fugitive Jack Kincaid. It was a thin plan, but the only one available. I moved through the shadows of ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss, staying off the crushed shell paths, my borrowed tuxedo jacket snagging on thorns. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and salt water. Up ahead, through the trees, I saw the glint of moonlight on the calm bay. A small stone jetty, almost hidden by mangrove roots, jutted out into the water. Tied up to it was exactly what I needed. A sturdy-looking inflatable Zodiac tender, the kind used by yacht crews, probably left by someone attending the gala. Keys might even be in it. My luck, maybe, was finally turning. I approached the jetty cautiously, scanning the darkness. No guards visible here. Their focus would be on the main house, the service areas, the landward exits. The sirens seemed slightly further away now, maybe tangled in traffic outside the main gates. Just slip into the Zodiac, start the outboard, and putter quietly away into the bay's darkness. Going for a moonlight cruise, Callahan? The voice came from the shadows near the base of the jetty, cool, controlled, laced with an icy anger that stopped me dead in my tracks. Elena. She stepped out, emerging from behind a gnarled mangrove trunk. Dressed practically in dark cargo pants and a black top, she looked far removed from the biologist cover she'd used in Costa Rica. Her face was taut with fury, her eyes burning in the dim light. She held her pistol loosely, pointed towards the ground, but her stance was coiled, ready. Elena, I said, keeping my own voice low, trying to mask my surprise, my sudden bone-deep weariness. Fancy meeting you here. Enjoying the party? I saw your handiwork back there, she spat, ignoring my question. Creating chaos, drawing attention. Very subtle. Was that your client's plan? Or just your usual reckless improvisation? Sometimes recklessness is the only option, I said. There were kids in that van. There's always collateral damage in this business, she shot back, taking a step closer. But you always make it worse. You charge in, focused only on your angle, your payday, leaving messes for everyone else to clean up. Just like in the jungle. The bitterness over Costa Rica, over my perceived abandonment of her quest for Ramirez's data, poured off her. You got the Serpiente plans. What else did you find out tonight? What did you hear? Who is behind this trafficking ring here in Miami? Tell me. Now isn't the time, Elena, I said, glancing back towards the main house. The sounds of activity were still audible, distant shouts carrying over the water. We need to get out of here. Both of us. I gestured towards the Zodiac. There's room for two. I'm not going anywhere with you, she said, her voice trembling slightly with rage. Not until I know what you know. You think I didn't follow you? Track you all the way from Costa Rica? I know you met with Moreau. I know you've been playing some game with the cartel here. Whose side are you really on, Kincaid? Who is pulling your strings? Right now, I'm on the side of not getting captured or killed, I said tersely. We can sort out the rest later. Get in the boat. I took a step towards the Zodiac. No. Her voice was flat, final. And then she moved fast. Not towards me, but towards the Zodiac. Before I could react, she raised her pistol, not at me, but at the inflatable boat's fat gray pontoons. Two quick muffled shots, fut-fut. The sound of escaping air hissed loudly in the night's stillness. The sturdy Zodiac sagged instantly, settling lower in the water, useless. I stared at her, then at the ruined boat, dumbfounded. What the hell did you do? Leveling the playing field, she said, her eyes glittering with a cold fire that looked chillingly like satisfaction. You don't get to just walk away this time, Callahan. Not with what you know. She raised her pistol slightly again, not aiming directly at me, but firing a single shot straight up into the air. The sharp crack echoed across the water, louder this time without the suppressor fully seated, guaranteed to draw attention from anyone remotely nearby. Let's see how you improvise your way out of this. Headlights swept across the far end of the gardens, heading towards the bayfront road. Shouts erupted, closer now. Cartel security, alerted by the shot, maybe already tracking us, converging on our position. The betrayal was absolute, breathtaking in its calculated spite. She hadn't just refused to help, she had actively sabotaged my escape, deliberately drawing the hunters towards us. Driven by revenge, by suspicion, by her own single-minded agenda, she just potentially signed both our death warrants. You crazy bitch. I snarled, spinning away from the useless boat, away from her, plunging back towards the tangled mangrove edge as the first figures appeared at the end of the stone jetty, flashlights cutting through the darkness, weapons raised. There. By the water, a voice yelled. Gunfire erupted again, automatic bursts ripping through the leaves near the jetty, chewing up the limestone. Elena, presumably, had already vanished back into the shadows she navigated so well. I pushed deeper into the mangroves, thorns tearing at me, brackish water soaking my ruined tuxedo trousers. Behind me, concentrated fire raked the area around the jetty. They thought I was still there, trapped. I needed a new plan, fast. Swimming was an option, but Biscayne Bay held more than just moonlight reflections. Bull sharks weren't uncommon. Getting back through the gardens towards a land exit meant navigating patrols, both cartel and now likely police converging outside the gates. I glanced back through the tangled roots. Saw figures moving cautiously down the jetty, saw Elena nowhere. Saw the ruined Zodiac. Saw the closing trap. Improvisation wasn't just an option now. It was the only currency I had left, and the price of failure was absolute. The betrayal burned hotter than the bullet graze on my arm, fueling a cold, desperate anger as I slipped deeper into the concealing darkness of the mangroves. Chapter 9. Plunging into the mangrove thicket felt like diving into a nest of razors. Pneumatophores, those knobby breathing roots, clawed at my legs, threatening to trip me in the darkness. Thick viscous mud sucked at my shoes, trying to claim them. The air hung heavy, stagnant, buzzing with unseen insects drawn to my sweat and blood. Behind me, shouts and the crackle of radios echoed from the jetty area as Rico's men fanned out, their flashlight beams cutting frantic patterns through the trees. Elena's parting shot, both literal and figurative, had painted a bullseye squarely on this section of the shoreline. Staying on land was suicide. They'd box me in against the seawall. The bay beckoned, dark and vast under the sliver of moon. Swimming offered concealment but carried its own risks. Currents, unseen obstacles, things with teeth that didn't carry guns but were just as deadly. A calculated risk, like everything else tonight. I eased into the water near a dense cluster of roots, submerging slowly to avoid a splash. The bay water felt surprisingly cool, after the jungle-like humidity of the gardens, shocking the system, clearing my head for a split second. It also smelled faintly of brine and decay, a reminder of what lurked beneath the placid surface. I took a deep breath and pushed off, swimming parallel to the shore, staying within the deep shadows cast by the overhanging mangroves, aiming generally south, away from the concentrated activity around Vizcaya's main grounds. Progress was slow, exhausting. My borrowed tuxedo trousers, already soaked and muddy, dragged like lead weights. The bullet graze on my ribs, and the gash on my arm from Lars's knife in Panama throbbed in rhythm with my strokes. Every splash seemed amplified in the night's stillness, certain to draw attention. I kept glancing back towards the shore, expecting to see flashlight beams sweeping the water, hear the bark of commands. Nothing yet. Maybe Elena's shot, combined with the chaos I'd caused at the loading dock, had pulled most of the security inland. After what felt like an eternity, maybe half a mile down the coast, the mangrove fringe gave way to a slightly more open area, the backyards of expensive coconut grove homes, their lawns rolling down to private docks and seawalls. Lights glowed invitingly from picture windows, glimpses of a peaceful world, utterly alien to the one I currently inhabit. Getting out of the water here was risky, exposing myself on manicured lawns, but staying in the bay indefinitely wasn't an option. I spotted a low seawall with concrete steps leading up to a darkened yard, no guard dogs barking, no obvious security lights. Moving with excruciating slowness, I pulled myself out of the water, dripping, shivering despite the heat, feeling utterly spent. I lay flat on the cool grass for a moment, gasping for air, listening. Distant sirens still wailed towards Vizcaya, but here only the chirping of crickets and the gentle lap of waves broke the silence. I needed to get off this waterfront, find a street, find some anonymous way to melt back into the city's bloodstream. Crouching low, I moved up the lawn towards the darkened house, planning to skirt around it towards the street beyond. That's when I heard the car, tires squealing softly on the pavement out front, engine cut abruptly. Not a police cruiser's approach. Too quiet, too deliberate. Peering cautiously around the corner of the house, I saw it. A black Escalade, engine off, lights off, parked halfway down the quiet residential block. Two figures got out, moving quickly, scanning the street, speaking into wrist comms. Rico's men. They must have anticipated someone trying to exit the bay here, cutting off potential escape routes from Vizcaya by land. They were disciplined, spreading out, checking yards. My heart sank. Trapped again. I flattened myself behind a large ornamental urn near the side of the house, trying to control my breathing. Maybe they wouldn't check this far down. Then a porch light flicked on at the house directly across the street. An older woman, maybe 70s, hair in curlers, wearing a housecoat, stepped out, peering into the darkness. "Who's out there?" she called out, her voice shaky but carrying in the quiet night. "What's all that noise down the way?" She must have heard the distant sirens, maybe the commotion. One of the Escalade men turned towards her instantly, raising a hand. "Police business, ma'am," he called back smoothly, his voice calm, authoritative. "Just stay inside, everything's under control." But she didn't retreat. Maybe she was confused, maybe just nosy. She took a step further onto her porch. "Police? You don't look like police. What are you doing on our street?" The man exchanged a look with his partner. They couldn't afford witnesses, couldn't afford a scene that might draw real police to this specific location while they were hunting me. The first man started walking purposefully across the street, towards the woman's house. "Ma'am, I need you to go back inside. Now." "I want to see some identification," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. He reached her porch steps just as I realized what was about to happen. He wasn't going to show her ID. He wasn't going to argue. He needed silence, control. Before I could even think to shout a warning, he moved with brutal speed, grabbing the woman, clapping a hand over her mouth, shoving her back towards her front door. Her eyes went wide with terror. A muffled scream died behind his hand. His partner was already moving to the Escalade, opening the rear door. They weren't just silencing a witness. They were taking her. Leverage. Hostage. A disposable piece to cover their tracks, or force my hand if they suspected I was nearby. It didn't matter. An innocent woman, startled from her sleep, caught in the crossfire of my escape, was being dragged into the nightmare. Because of me. Because Elena decided to play her own vengeful game. Fury, cold and sharp, surged through me, momentarily eclipsing the exhaustion and pain. I raised my pistol, lining up a shot at the man wrestling the woman towards the Escalade. But his partner was already scanning the darkness, weapon raised, sensing movement perhaps. Firing now would mean a shootout on a residential street, endangering others, maybe getting the woman killed in the crossfire. And I was outgunned, outmanned, barely standing. The man shoved the struggling woman into the back of the Escalade. His partner jumped into the driver's seat. The first man got in, slammed the door, and the SUV's engine roared to life. Tires squealing, it sped away down the street, disappearing around the corner, leaving behind only an empty porch with the light still on, and the echo of a muffled scream hanging in the humid night air. I lowered my pistol, shaking with a mixture of rage and helplessness. I had escaped Vizcaya. Barely alive, yes. But the cost was an innocent woman dragged into the darkness because I brought the storm to her doorstep. Elena's vengeance, Rico's ruthlessness, Moreau's manipulations, my own actions, it was all a tangled web, and someone completely uninvolved had just been caught in the center. Standing there, soaked, bleeding, shivering in the shadows of Coconut Grove, the weight of that capture settled on me, heavier than any physical blow. This wasn't just about stopping traffickers anymore. It wasn't just about survival or exposing conspiracies. It was about her. I had to get her back. Whatever the cost. The deadly reckoning wasn't over. It had just become terrifyingly personal. Chapter 10. The image burned behind my eyelids. The old woman's terrified eyes, the brute's hand clamped over her mouth, the black Escalade swallowing her whole and vanishing into the night. Collateral damage, Elena might have called it. To Rico and his thugs, she was less than nothing, a loose end, a potential inconvenience, maybe temporary leverage. To me, hiding uselessly in the shadows, she was the final straw. The point where the careful calculations, the double life, the shades of gray I'd been navigating, collapsed into stark black and white. They took her because of me. I had to get her back. Forget Moreau's mission. Forget the trafficking network intel, for now. Forget the warrants, forget lying low. This was immediate. This was absolute. I found a secluded spot under the Rickenbacker Causeway Bridge, the rumble of late-night traffic overhead masking the frantic energy buzzing through me. Pulled out the secure tablet Sully had provided, bypassed the firewalls, and sent an emergency burst transmission, praying he was monitoring. Urgent. Civilian female abducted Rico Alvarez crew, approximately 22:45 Eastern Standard Time, vicinity Vizcaya South exit. Dark Chevy Escalade, partial plate possible Delta Foxtrot. Need track. Need location now. Repeat now. The wait was agonizing. Minutes stretched, filled only by the lapping water against the pilings and the distant city hum. Was Sully even reachable? Could he possibly track them fast enough? These weren't amateurs. They'd likely ditch the Escalade quickly, switch vehicles, maybe disable onboard trackers if they were smart. Then a reply blinked onto the screen. A satellite map centered on western Miami-Dade, near the Tamiami Airport. A single red dot marked a sprawling warehouse complex listed under Amapola Imports, Agricultural Supplies. Sully's text followed. Escalade tracked via traffic cams to vicinity SW 137th Avenue. Disappeared near warehouse zone matching, known Alvarez associate property. High probability target facility. Amapola Imports. Limited structural data available. Appears reinforced concrete, multiple loading bays, high perimeter fence. Thermal imaging suggests 8 to 10 personnel active inside. No confirmation on hostage location within structure. Extreme risk profile Jack. Advise extreme caution. Amapola Imports. Poppies. Fitting for a cartel front. Reinforced concrete fences guards a stronghold. And they had the woman inside. Extreme risk? That was an understatement. But caution wasn't an option anymore. She didn't have time for caution. Getting there required another vehicle donation. This time a beat-up plumber's van left unlocked near a construction site. Less conspicuous than another sedan. I drove west, away from the coastal glitz, towards the flat, sprawling industrial no-man's land near the airport. The drive felt detached, hyper-focused. My mind worked automatically, processing Sully's limited intel, formulating infiltration options, assessing risks, pushing down the anger and the fear, channeling it into cold, sharp purpose. The Amapola Imports warehouse matched Sully's description. A squat, ugly concrete box squatting behind a high chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Security lights cast harsh shadows. Cameras mounted on poles swept the perimeter. Only one guarded entrance visible from the road. Trying the front door wasn't happening. I parked the van several blocks away, watching, using binoculars. Saw 2 guards patrolling the fence line, armed with shotguns, moving with lazy confidence. Saw another vehicle, a dark sedan similar to Rico's, parked near the main office entrance. Activity inside seemed minimal, consistent with a late-night skeleton crew, maybe 8 to 10 as Sully estimated. Where would they hold her? Not the main warehouse floor. An office? A basement, if there was one? A break room? Sully's thermal imaging suggested a cluster of heat signatures in a smaller attached structure at the rear of the main warehouse, possibly offices or living quarters. That felt like the most logical place. Access would mean getting past the fence, across an open yard, and finding an entry point at the rear, avoiding the main patrols. I waited until just after 3 a.m., when vigilance might be at its lowest ebb. Dressed in dark clothes, armed with my pistol, knife, and basic breaching tools, I cut through the chain-link fence at the darkest point along the back perimeter, shielded by overgrown weeds and discarded pallets. Slipping through, I moved low and fast across the gravel yard, using stacked containers and derelict machinery for cover, heading towards the rear structure. A single steel door, no windows. Electronic lock pad beside it. Beyond my lock-picking skills under pressure. Plan B, find another way. I circled the structure silently. Found it, a barred window, likely a bathroom or storage room, set high on the wall. Too high to reach easily. I backtracked, located a discarded oil drum near a pile of scrap metal, rolled it silently across the gravel, and positioned it beneath the window. Climbing onto the drum, I examined the bars. Thick steel, but the mounting bolts looked old, possibly corroded. Worth a try. Using a compact, high-torque portable drill from my kit, quiet, battery-powered, I started working on the bolts securing the bar frame to the concrete wall. The whine of the drill sounded deafeningly loud to me, but hopefully masked by the ambient industrial hum and distance from the main guard posts. Sweat dripped, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of focus, the knowledge that discovery meant failure, meant her death. One bolt sheared off. Then another. The third was stubborn, corroded fast. I applied more pressure, the drill bit smoking slightly. Finally, it snapped. The bar frame loosened. I carefully pried it outwards, just enough to create a gap. The window behind it was thick wired glass, but unlocked. I slid it open. More luck than I deserved. Boosting myself up, I squeezed through the narrow opening, dropping silently onto the tiled floor inside. A small, grimy bathroom. The door leading out was unlocked. I cracked it open, listened. Faint sounds from down a short hallway, muffled voices, maybe a television. Moving like smoke, I eased down the hallway. Past a small, empty break room. Reached an office door, slightly ajar. Inside, two men sat at a metal desk, watching a flickering monitor displaying security camera feeds, including the fence line I'd just breached. But they weren't paying close attention, more interested in the card game spread out between them. Beyond their office, another closed door. I could hear something from behind it now. A low sound, maybe weeping, quickly muffled. Her. Taking out the two guards in the office had to be fast, silent, absolute. No alarms. I took a deep breath, centered myself. Burst through the doorway, pistol leading. Before they could react to the sudden intrusion, before their hands could go to the weapons resting on the desk beside their cards, I fired twice into each man, suppressed shots barely louder than heavy coughs. They slumped forward onto the desk without a sound. Heart pounding, I crossed the office to the closed door, listened again. A soft whimpering sound. Locked. A heavy deadbolt. No time for picking. I braced myself, aimed carefully at the lock mechanism just above the handle, and fired twice more. The lock shattered, the door splintered inward. Inside, sitting on a metal folding chair in the bare, windowless room, was the old woman from Coconut Grove. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth gagged with duct tape, her hands bound behind her. She flinched violently as I entered, gun still raised. "It's okay," I whispered, holstering my weapon, raising my hands slowly. "I'm not with them. I'm getting you out of here." I moved quickly, cutting the tape from her mouth, slicing through the zip ties binding her wrists. She sobbed, rubbing her raw skin, looking up at me with terrified, uncomprehending eyes. Who are you?" she stammered. "Doesn't matter," I said gently but urgently. "We have to go. Now. Can you walk?" She nodded, still trembling, trying to stand on shaky legs. I helped her up, supporting her weight. The rescue was initiated. We were out of the cell. But we were still deep inside a cartel stronghold, with dead guards outside and unknown numbers of hostiles elsewhere in the compound. Getting her out safely was the next impossible task. The riskiest part of the mission had just begun. Chapter 11. "We have to move," I urged Mrs. Diaz, keeping my voice low and steady, trying to project a calm I was far from feeling. Her eyes were still wide with terror, but a flicker of fragile trust seemed to dawn as she registered I wasn't one of the men who'd taken her. She nodded, clutching the housecoat tight around her frail body. "Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say." Getting her back out through the high bathroom window was impossible. Sneaking past the main guard post with her in tow was equally suicidal. Looking out the shattered office door, past the dead guards slumped over their card game, I could see the vast, dimly lit expanse of the main warehouse floor. Stacks of crates, pallets, forklifts, and opportunity. A noisy, fiery opportunity. If we couldn't sneak out, we'd blow the doors off on our way. "Wait here," I told Mrs. Diaz, positioning her behind the sturdy metal desk in the office. "Don't make a sound until I come back for you." I slipped out of the office, moving quickly through the shadows of the warehouse. My target, the fuel drums I'd seen earlier near the loading docks and the parked forklifts. If I could create enough mayhem at the front of the warehouse, it might draw the remaining guards away from the rear perimeter, giving us a chance to slip out the way I came in. Found the drums easily enough. Standard 55-gallon barrels, smelling pungently of diesel. Nearby, stacked high on pallets, were bags labeled ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Amapola Imports, agricultural supplies. Right. Fertilizer and diesel fuel. a classic recipe for improvised explosive disaster, favored by insurgents and desperate men worldwide. Working fast, using a knife to slash open several bags, I spread the granular fertilizer around the base of the fuel drums. Then I spotted a forklift, with the key still dangling. Perfect. I climbed aboard, the electric motor whining softly as it started. Carefully, I maneuvered the forks under a pallet loaded with what looked like rags or packing material, lifted it high, then drove towards the fuel drum setup. Positioning the forklift, I tilted the mast forward, dumping the flammable pallet directly onto the fertilizer-dusted drums. Next, I drove another forklift over to a large diesel generator humming near the main roller door, used the forks to puncture its fuel tank, letting diesel spill out across the concrete floor towards my improvised bomb. All I needed now was an ignition source and a distraction. I spotted a tangle of electrical conduit running near the main circuit breaker panel for the warehouse lights. Using the forklift again, I deliberately snagged the conduit with the raised forks, ripping it partially from the wall, showering sparks onto the diesel-soaked floor near the generator. Flames erupted instantly with a hungry whoosh, spreading rapidly across the spilled fuel towards the main warehouse lights breaker panel. Predictable chaos ensued. Alarms shrieked, fire alarms this time, adding to the confusion. Lights flickered, then went out as the main panel shorted, plunging the warehouse into near darkness, illuminated only by the rapidly growing fire near the front. Shouts echoed from different parts of the building as guards reacted, unsure if it was an attack, an accident, or something else. Their attention, hopefully, was now fully drawn towards the front. This was our chance. I sprinted back to the office where I'd left Mrs. Diaz, smoke already beginning to fill the air. Time to go. Stay low, follow me. She was terrified but resolute, gripping my arm tightly as I led her back through the darkened office, past the dead guards, and out into the main warehouse space, sticking close to the wall, heading for the rear where I'd cut the fence. The fire near the front provided both illumination and cover, casting wild dancing shadows, the roar of the flames and the shriek of alarms drowning out our movements. We were halfway across the vast space when a figure emerged from the smoke near the center aisle, blocking our path. Rico Alvarez. His suit jacket was gone, his face smudged with soot, his eyes burning with cold fury in the flickering firelight. He held his pistol steady, aimed right at me. Behind him, two more of his men fanned out, weapons raised. They hadn't all run towards the fire. "Cole!" Rico snarled, his voice tight with rage. "You stupid interfering fool. Did you really think you could betray us and walk away?" "She's an old woman, Rico." I yelled back over the growing roar of the fire, pushing Mrs. Diaz slightly behind me. "She saw nothing. Let her go." Rico laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Collateral damage. Like your bartender friend at Ember. Efficient work, by the way," confirming him as the leak. Pity he had to be silenced so thoroughly. He took a step closer, pistol unwavering. "But you are different. You saw the logbooks, didn't you? In the warehouse. Thought you were so clever." So he had known, or suspected, about the hidden compartment. The inventory check wasn't just a test, it was bait. "It ends here, Kincaid," Rico said, using my real name now, the pretense completely dropped. He must have finally made the connection. Maybe Moreau's inquiries, maybe something from Vance. No more games. He raised his pistol to fire. I shoved Mrs. Diaz sideways behind a stack of crates and dove the other way, firing as I moved. My shot went wide. Rico's shot plucked at my sleeve. His men opened up, bullets ricocheting off the concrete floor around me. I scrambled behind another stack of crates, returning fire, trying to keep their heads down. Mrs. Diaz was whimpering behind her cover. I was pinned down, outgunned, with a terrified civilian depending on me. Then the world turned white and searing hot. The fertilizer-soaked fuel drums I'd rigged near the front finally cooked off. The explosion wasn't massive, contained somewhat by the warehouse walls, but the shockwave slammed through the building like a physical blow, momentarily stunning everyone, followed by a massive fireball that billowed towards the roof, raining down burning debris. In that instant of blinding light and disorientation, I saw my chance. Rico and his men were momentarily stunned, staggering back from the intense heat and shockwave. I surged forward, not towards my previous cover, but straight at Rico, closing the distance before he could fully recover his aim. He reacted fast, bringing his pistol up, but I was too close. I slammed into him, knocking the gun from his hand, driving him backwards. We crashed onto the gritty concrete floor, grappling furiously amidst the smoke and flickering firelight. He was strong, fueled by rage, landing heavy blows. I fought back with grim desperation, ignoring the pain in my ribs and arm, knowing this was it. Get past him, or die here with Mrs. Diaz. I drove my elbow into his throat, eliciting a choked gasp, then brought my knee up hard into his side. He grunted, grip loosening for a fraction of a second. It was enough. I twisted free, grabbed a heavy wrench that had fallen from a nearby shelf, and brought it down hard against the side of his head. A sickening crunch. Rico's eyes rolled back, and he went limp beneath me. Unconscious. Dead. Didn't matter right now. His two men were recovering, starting to fire again but erratically, hampered by the smoke and fire. I scrambled back to Mrs. Diaz. Now. We run now. Pulling her along, shielding her body with my own as much as possible, I sprinted towards the rear wall, towards the fence breach, ignoring the shouts and sporadic gunfire behind us. We burst out into the relative cool of the night air, just as the first fire engine sirens screamed in the distance, converging on the now brightly burning warehouse. I half-carried, half-dragged Mrs. Diaz through the hole in the fence, back to the waiting plumber's van. Sirens were coming from multiple directions now. Police would be seconds behind the fire trucks. Shoving her into the passenger seat, I jumped behind the wheel, started the engine, and roared away from the curb, tires spitting gravel, leaving the Inferno and Rico Alvarez behind us. Looking in the rearview mirror, I saw the warehouse fully engulfed, flames leaping high into the night sky, lighting up the industrial sprawl like a scene from hell. Miami was burning, at least this small corner of its rotten underbelly. I had the woman safe beside me, sobbing quietly now, reaction setting in. I had taken out Rico, the local head of the trafficking operation. A victory. But the fire felt less like a triumph and more like a funeral pyre, for my cover, for any chance of subtlety, maybe even for my soul. And the wider shadows, Croft, Vance, the syndicate, they remained untouched, looming larger than ever. Chapter 12. Driving away from the inferno that used to be Amapola Imports, the flashing emergency lights receding in the rearview mirror, felt less like escape and more like punching through a paper screen into another, quieter kind of hell. Beside me, Mrs. Diaz huddled against the passenger door of the plumber's van, trembling uncontrollably, occasional dry sobs escaping her. I kept my voice low, reassuring, telling her she was safe now, that I'd get her help, while my own nerves screamed and the adrenaline crash left me feeling hollowed out, shaky. Getting her help couldn't involve police or hospitals, not without bringing down a world of unwanted attention on both of us. There was only one option, distasteful as it felt. Using the last charge on Rico's burner phone before ditching it, I made a brief, untraceable call to the secure number Isabel Moreau had provided for emergencies. "It's Cole," I said when her cool voice answered. "Your missing persons investigation turned up a victim. Elderly woman, abducted near Vizcaya tonight. Requires immediate medical attention and secure, permanent relocation. Non-negotiable." I gave her the coordinates for a quiet park miles away from the warehouse fire. "Be there in 20 minutes. No police. Handle it discreetly, or everything blows back on you." I didn't wait for a reply, just ended the call and crushed the phone under my heel. Leaving Mrs. Diaz with Moreau's waiting people, discreet professionals in an anonymous black sedan who materialized exactly on schedule, felt like abandoning unfinished business, like leaving a piece of my own conscience behind. But Moreau, whatever her motives, had the resources to protect the old woman, to make her disappear safely in a way I couldn't. I watched the sedan drive away, then vanished back into the Miami shadows myself. The next few days were a blur of cheap motel rooms even grimier than the last one, antiseptic wipes for the new collection of cuts and bruises overlaying the old ones, and cheap whiskey to dull the edges. I stayed away from the water, away from my marina, letting the news cycle chew over the massive warehouse fire near Miami. Arson suspected. Possible gangland connections. Ties to import-export businesses. The usual vague pronouncements that meant the police had nothing solid. Rico Alvarez's name never surfaced publicly. He'd simply ceased to exist, another ghost swallowed by the Miami heat. Eventually, when the immediate heat seemed to have dissipated, I risked contacting Sully. His digital face, grainy on my burner tablet screen, looked tired. "Quite the bonfire, Jack," was his only comment on the warehouse. ME confirms multiple fatalities inside, mostly unidentified. Rico Alvarez is officially among the missing, presumed barbecued. Local PD is chasing its tail with rumors of cartel wars. Croft released a statement condemning violence and pledging more funds to youth centers. Predictable. "And Vance?" I asked. Silent. Panama operations show no unusual activity. He's letting the Miami branch burn, cutting his losses. Elena. Vanished. No chatter, no sightings. Could be deep cover, could be dead, could be halfway around the world. Sully sighed. The trafficking operation here took a major hit. Disrupted, leaderless. But the network, the interstate routes you uncovered, that's still out there. And Croft and Vance are still untouched. So, status quo, I said bitterly. Pretty much, Sully agreed. Except your warrants are still active. And now you've annoyed both the remnants of Rico's crew and probably Harrison Croft himself, even if he can't publicly admit it. After the call, I knew I couldn't stay in motels forever. The Sea Witch called, the only real home I had left, however compromised it felt. Slipping back into the marina under the cover of a moonless night felt like returning to a crime scene. But climbing aboard, smelling the familiar scent of salt, antique, and old diesel, brought a measure of grudging peace. Alone in the gently rocking cabin, the sounds of the city muffled by the water, the reflections began. Playing the tape back in my head. Moreau's invitation, Rico's ultimatum, the warehouse discovery, the gala disruption, Alina's betrayal, the raw violence of the fight with Rico, Mrs. Diaz's terrified eyes. Had I done the right thing? Saving one old woman while potentially condemning dozens more down the line by merely disrupting, not destroying the network. Killing Rico felt necessary, brutally so, but the guards in the warehouse office, they were just hired muscle following orders, caught in the crossfire of my desperate gamble. More ghosts to add to the collection. And Elena. Her fury, her accusation, "You're just like them." Was she right? Had I become so numb, so focused on the mission, whether Moreau's, my anonymous clients, or just my own survival, that the human cost got lost in the calculation? I'd left her in the jungle, prioritized the mission. I'd used Leo's fear, paid him off, maybe led Rico straight to him. I'd walked into Croft's party on Rico's arm. The lines weren't just blurred, they felt erased. I pulled out the data card from Panama, Suyo's Saidu, its secrets still only partially understood. The Ouroboros symbol. The hints of biotech. The Vance-Croft connection. Sully was right. The local fire was out, but the forest was still burning. The syndicate, or whatever entity Vance and Croft answered to, was vast, its tentacles reaching from Florida to Panama, Costa Rica, likely further. They dealt in human lives, political destabilization, advanced weapons, maybe worse. I stepped out onto the deck of the Sea Witch. The night air was soft, the lights of Miami casting a seductive glow across the bay. Paradise, bought and paid for with secrets and blood. My reflection stared back from the dark water. A tired man, scarred inside and out, clinging to a fragile sanctuary on the edge of a corrupt world. Retirement. Peace. Those were mirages, shimmering just out of reach. As long as Croft played philanthropist nearby, as long as Vance pulled strings from Panama, as long as the Ouroboros network spread its shadow, rest was impossible. Lars was still out there, wanting the data. My unknown client's manipulations remained a mystery. Alina's fate was unknown. Mrs. Diaz was safe, but how many others weren't? The gentle rocking of the boat felt less like comfort, more like the pull of an outgoing tide. The wider shadows beckoned, demanding attention, promising more danger, more compromises, more reckonings. I didn't know where the next thread would lead, but staring out at the dark water, I knew with a weary certainty that settled deep in my bones that I would have to follow it. The echoes of this fight would ripple outwards, and eventually the tide would turn again. Can I send you conscripted for free? Even more, in the Declassified series. Check out all books on Amazon. Get the box set, or grab the action-packed next in series. Deep Dive. Deception Tide. Miami Mirage. Border Wars. Course of Action. The Summit.